How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number, 877-973-7425. Hope you are doing well. You got a week from Thanksgiving. Start thinking about thawing out your turkey. You want to put it in the bottom of the fridge where it's nice and cold and let it thaw out slowly in the fridge. And you might want to think about it. If you got over a 15-pound turkey, you might want to start thinking about doing it tonight or tomorrow. Start considering it. You don't want a frozen turkey on Thursday. Above all else, please don't try to deep fry a frozen turkey. May God have mercy on your soul. All right. I want to start with Comey before we get into the jobs report. We got a mixed bag on jobs. So here's the situation. If you are a longtime listener of this program, know I was a lawyer. I did criminal defense. I don't recall ever in my career as a lawyer or in my time paying attention to legal issues, I don't ever recall a screw up as big as the screw up in the prosecution of James Comey, and I will not be surprised if the judge throws the case out. The judge clearly was unhappy with the prosecution, in large part because an assistant prosecutor admitted that the careerists in the DOJ had concluded there was no there to prosecute Comey. Now, you can say it was because they were part of the deep state. That's fine. But there was no evidence of that fact to give to the judge. And so the judge has to take that fact as it is. But the real screw up here, the serious screw up, is that the prosecutor, when questioned by the judge, and I got to say, I've never seen a judge aggressively question a prosecutor like this federal judge did. But in so doing, the prosecutor admitted that the grand jury never actually saw the final indictment, that the foreperson of the jury signed off on the indictment without it having been presented to the grand jury for their consideration. You don't do that. See, the grand jury issues the indictment and the prosecutor drafts it for the grand jury. And an indictment had been drafted for the grand jury, but then revised and brought back to the grand jury. And the grand jury didn't actually get a chance to look at it. The foreperson signed it. That blows my mind that something like that happened. That in and of itself is grounds to throw the case out. What a screw up by the prosecutor in the Comey case. If the case gets thrown out, what you need to understand is when you hear a lot of people belly aching about Comey being protected by this judge, no, the prosecutor really screwed this up. Really screwed this up. All of you who are lawyers listening right now understand this. Probably the rest don't. But if you present an indictment for the grand jury to sign off on and they don't even get a chance to look at it, and the prosecutor admits to the judge the grand jury never even looked at it, that's a really big thing. I'm just flummoxed by how they could screw this up. So that's all that needs to be said on Comey. There's no reason to do an entire massive monologue on it. It's just a massive prosecutorial screw up on this and probably gets Comey out of having to deal with anything at all. Now, let's talk about jobs. The top line number is pretty good. This is Rick Santelli. I always like to get his analysis of it from CNBC this morning.
This is the September jobs report. Non-farm payrolls are up a robust 119,000. 119,000 would be the best since April when we were up 158,000. If we look at labor force participation rate, it ticked up. That's a good thing. 62.4 equals where we were in May. You have to go to April of this year when it was 62.6 to find a higher number. If we look at the hours worked, and this is always important, it remains at 34.2. To find a lower number, you're going to January when it was 34.1. We have initial jobless claims. This is for the week of November 15th. As I said, there's weeks missing. We're expecting 227,000. Comes in at 220,000. These numbers do not reflect nervousness in the labor market. They've been very well behaved. 220,000 would be the lowest level of claims since mid-July.
Now, that was somewhat edited, and it was the Trump team that put out that video, and you do need to know that people who are Americans gained employment. 2.5 million Americans have jobs. 670,000 foreign-born workers lost jobs. 3.4 million Americans joined the labor force. 708,000 foreign-born workers left the labor force. 119,000 jobs. Here's the problem. That's September. That's before the major layoffs started in October from Amazon and Meta and Microsoft and Intel and Target and a number of other companies laying off employees. So that was September. They say we're not going to get October. I say this is mixed because we're actually losing blue collar jobs. We actually year over year job losses have hit 59,000 in manufacturing industries. In fact, despite the tariffs, we've lost millions of manufacturing jobs, and we're losing a significant number now. And we have in the last couple of months lost those. But there's more to it than that. Let me dive into the Wall Street Journal data here because, in fact, if you text data to 33777, you can get the show notes. This is all there. Unemployment has actually gone up to 4.4%. And while September had good numbers, they revised August down so that August actually had job losses. There were 4,000 jobs lost. July's payroll was actually reduced down to 72,000. It had been about 100,000, reduced down to 72,000 in July. So in other words, we actually were short 33,000 jobs headed into September. Now, stocks were encouraged by the September numbers, and keep in mind, one of the reasons that the unemployment number, and I got to, listen, this isn't spin, it's not BS, this isn't me covering for Donald Trump, as some of you are about to accuse me of when I say this. The unemployment number going up by 0.1% is actually not a bad thing. Why? What does the unemployment number not count? People not looking for jobs, unemployed and not looking. More people are looking for jobs. So people who have been sitting on the sidelines are coming back into the job search, and that causes the unemployment number to go up. So people are coming back looking for jobs. They're done sitting on the sidelines. However, that's the good news about the unemployment number, but there's a problem with the unemployment number as well. And that is that we've got a lot of people who can't find jobs. The number of continuing unemployment claims has risen 28,000 to 1.974 million. 1,974,000 Americans are looking for work and they can't find work. That means that there are a lot of companies not hiring. And here's the problem too. And I know this, I was trying to help a guy in his 40s find a job in the tech industry. Thought I had him a job, and it fell through. Not on him. It was on the company side of things. When you get over 40, it's harder and harder. And when you get over 50, it's almost impossible to get back into the job force. We've got a lot of people living on unemployment right now who are actively looking for jobs and are not finding jobs. And some of you, like me, your gut will be, well, there are some people there looking for a job. Yes. But there also are a lot of people looking and can't find jobs. Now, here's the other problem. We're not going to get the October numbers. There's a growing movement within the Federal Reserve to not cut rates in December. They seem to have a pretty strong consensus on cutting the rates in December, lowering interest rates. Now they're not so sure. One of the reasons is because the jobs number came in higher than expected. That more jobs were created in September, and we're flying blind on October data. We're not going to get the October data. So a lot of the market assumed there would be another rate cut in December. That's now less likely to happen. So there's a lot happening within the stock market right now. There's a lot happening within the jobs market right now. There's a lot happening within the economy. It's just, it's increasingly difficult for young people out of college, particularly in the tech sector, to find jobs because AI is eating their jobs. If you're in your 40s and 50s and you're in the technology space, they don't want to hire you because you're a burden on health insurance to them in their respect, and they don't think an old dog can learn new tricks. You know, I got to say, and now I'm biased here, and I realize I can say this because I'm not doing this, but it seems to me that if you've got a 40 or 50-year-old who knows the job, it makes way more sense to plug them into the job because they've been sitting on the sidelines for a while. They're not going to go looking for another job. They're also not going to be one of these Gen Z entitlement mentality kids. They're actually going to have a good work ethic. It seems like you should plug them into the job force first before you go get the young kids. Now, the counter argument is that the young are cheaper for health insurance, and you can teach them your ways. You don't have to retrain them. But it just seems like we are devaluing skilled workers in this country, particularly in technology, for the young people out of college. For jobs, there are a lot of older people on the sidelines who actually could use jobs, who have families to support. And that's not to devalue the young. It's just the younger seeing their jobs getting eaten by AI and technology. When you couple that with the manufacturing problem, remember, tariffs were supposed to stir manufacturing in this country, and instead what's actually happening is we're seeing major layoffs within manufacturing in this country, in part because of the costs, aluminum in particular. We don't manufacture enough aluminum in the United States to meet our aluminum needs, and so we have to import it. And when you import it, it has a 50% tariff. And now the major aluminum importers into the United States are penalizing imports into the United States. If you listened to me yesterday, you heard that story. A lot of the media has missed this. The major aluminum importers into the United States are adding surcharges to sending aluminum to the United States because they're mad about the tariffs, and there are other countries they want to incentivize sending aluminum to essentially punish Donald Trump for the aluminum tariff. That's causing aluminum prices to go up even more. Beer prices have actually gone up in this country if they're in aluminum cans. Reynolds wrap foil prices going up. Car parts prices going up. A lot of things about aluminum are impacted by the tariff. So you combine all of these things, and the top line, and again, it's September, not October. We're never going to know October. The September number is good. It's actually better than people thought. That's a good thing. The unemployment rate going up at 10% is actually good news. That's why the markets have done okay today. Why? Because that unemployment uptick of 0.1% is actually because more people have started looking for jobs again. They sat it out for the Biden era. They waited for Donald Trump to become president. They're starting to pop their head up and say, maybe I can get a job now. And so the unemployment rate has gone up because people are on the sidelines coming back into the workforce, and that's good. That's actually what you want. You should not penalize Donald Trump for a 0.1% uptick in unemployment when the whole reason it went up is because people are coming back into the job force. Now, the bad side of this is August and July were revised down by 33,000 jobs, and we have more people on unemployment than we've had in the past because they're taking longer to find jobs. There's got to be a balance there for companies. The news is very mixed. The president has a lot to celebrate in these jobs numbers, but he can only celebrate so much because the underlying numbers suggest there is fundamental weakness in the economy right now. And the bigger problem is, what do you do with the 40 and 50-year-olds who are sitting on the sidelines who desperately need jobs and they can't find jobs right now? Forget about, we always obsess about young workers coming to the workforce. What about the middle-aged people who are unemployed and can't find jobs? They vote more than the young, by the way. We should be trying to find them jobs. And right now, no company has economic incentive to hire them. And I would suggest to Republicans, when you do your next reconciliation package, you should provide tax incentives for companies to hire the middle-aged people sitting on the sidelines trying to find jobs. Those people vote. They pay taxes. They'll have money again, and you want them on your side. Guys, if you struggle to come up with gifts for family members, I got a suggestion for you, the Cove Pure. I love mine. I wasn't sure I would like it as much as I do, and I really, really, really do. What is a Cove Pure? Well, it's an water filtration system. It's on the countertop. You can get cold water. You can get hot water. It even has a bottle button, so you can get the warm bottle perfect for formula for your baby at night. It's really easy. It's so convenient. I use it all the time in my office. You will love it. It sits on the countertop. It uses reverse osmosis. It gets rid of like pharmaceuticals, fluoride, lead, arsenic. It's the purest water you can get. It tastes fantastic. If you're looking for a great gift for your loved ones or for yourself that they're actually going to use the Cove Pure. I partnered with them. They're giving you a $250 holiday discount with my link, covepure.com/Eric. That's COVEPURE.com/Eric, ERICK. You get $250 off, covepure.com/Eric. The sale is going to end, so take advantage of this $250 holiday discount, covepure.com/Eric. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Eric Erickson. Glad to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. I'm excited to do this. I want to thank every one of you listening. We raised $265,000. That money will go to food banks and soup kitchens across the country that have partnered with Hungry for a Day. From Boston all the way out to Sacramento and beyond, coast to coast. We're not on in markets like Philadelphia and Boston, but Hungry for a Day is partnered with some soup kitchens and food banks in that area as well. So they're spreading it out among our listening area. Whether you live up in Connecticut or down in Florida or anywhere in California, Washington, Oregon, your local food bank and soup kitchen will be helped by Hungry for a Day. Thanks to you. $265,000 raised to feed thousands of families Thanksgiving meals this Thanksgiving. You guys, you all have contributed more than $1 million over the past several years for various activities, whether it's buying gas cards when gas prices are so high, partnering with the Salvation Army, or helping Hungry for a Day every year. Over $1 million you guys have contributed, and I can't thank you enough. I'm flabbergasted by the generosity of all of you. Every year you step up, and so thank you very, very much. $265,000 raised. That is a lot of money. That will do a lot of, and you know what? In fact, I can do the math right here. Let's see, 265 divided by 40. That's over 6,000 families, 6,625 families to be precise. That will get turkey sides and dessert thanks to you, people nationwide in need. And if you are in need, please consider reaching out and asking for help. We're happy to help. Let me tell you about Hillsdale College. They would love to help you. Hillsdale College is offering these great classes for you free of charge. You go to ericforhillsdale.com. Surely there's a topic you're interested in learning more about. And they've got them from philosophy to political science to history to capitalism and economics and math. They have so many classes. The one on capitalism, probably people in Washington should take it. It's 7 episodes, each episode 30 minutes, lectures by Hillsdale faculty, and you actually learn a lot. The lectures are very engaging. They're not boring. You're not going to get bored of it. And they're great. They're highly informative. Go to ericforhillsdale.com today to sign up. There's not a penny to be paid for this. It's offered free of charge from Hillsdale College. ericforhillsdale.com, ERICK, ericforhillsdale.com. Sign up today and just get smarter about a topic you're interested in. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I'm going to blow your mind with a wild story. I've got to thank Christopher Rufo for this story. This kind of blows my mind. He and Ryan Thorpe at the Manhattan Institute and City Journal have this story. If you get the show notes, you can get it. By the way, speaking of, you should text data to 33777 because in a little while I'll be sending out my recipe guide for the holidays, including the gravy recipe. I'm famous for the gravy recipe. You'd be amazed how many people every year email me on Thanksgiving and say, I made your gravy recipe. It was better than mine, because it is. Now, the story. This is Ryan Thorpe and Christopher Rufo in City Journal. The largest funder of Al-Shabaab, which is a terror group, is the Minnesota taxpayer. Minnesota is drowning in fraud. Billions in taxpayer dollars have been stolen during the administration of Governor Tim Walz alone. Democratic state officials overseeing one of the most generous welfare regimes in the country are asleep at the switch, and the media, duty-bound by progressive pieties, refuses to connect the dots. In many cases, the fraud has allegedly been perpetrated by members of Minnesota's sizable Somali community. Federal counterterrorism sources confirmed that millions of dollars in stolen funds have been sent back to Somalia, where they ultimately landed in the hands of the terror group Al-Shabaab. As one confidential source put it, the largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer. Our investigation shows what happens when a tribal mindset meets a bleeding heart bureaucracy, where imported clan loyalties collide with a political class too timid to offend, and when accusations of racism are cynically deployed to shield criminal behavior. The predictable result is graft, with taxpayers left to foot the bill. If you were to design a welfare program to facilitate fraud, it would probably look a lot like Minnesota's Medicaid Housing Stabilization Services program. The HSS program, the first of its kind in the country, was launched with a noble goal: help seniors, addicts, the disabled, and the mentally ill secure housing. It was designed with low barriers to entry and minimal requirements for reimbursement. Nonetheless, before the program went live in 2020, officials pegged its annual estimated price tag at $2.6 million. Costs quickly spiraled out of control. In 2021, the program paid out more than $21 million in claims. In the following years, annual costs shot up to $42 million, then $74 million, then $104 million. During the first 6 months of 2025, payouts totaled $61 million. On August 1st, Minnesota's Department of Human Services moved to scrap the program, noting that payments to 77 housing stabilization providers had been terminated this year due to credible allegations of fraud. Joe Thompson, then the acting U.S. attorney for the District of Minnesota, went even further, stating that the vast majority of the HSS program was fraudulent. On September 18th, Thompson announced criminal indictments for HSS fraud against Mokhtar Hassan Aden, Mustafa Dayib Ali, Khalid Ahmed Dayib, Abdifta Mahmoud Mohammed, Christopher Edjasoji Faladi, Emmanuel Oluwadamalaki Falad, Assad Ahmed Adal, and Anwar Ahmed Adal, 6 of whom, according to the U.S. Attorney's spokesman, are members of Minnesota's Somali community. Thompson made clear that this is just the first round of charges. What were they doing? This is kind of funny to me. Many of the people were getting their kids classified as having severe autism, getting payments from the system, and then rerouting that money, carrying it on board airplanes, flying it to Somalia, and handing it to the terrorists. In a press release announcing indictments, U.S. Attorney made clear the alleged autism fraud scheme extended to a wide network of people. To drive up enrollment, Hassan and her partner paid monthly cash kickback payments to the parents of children who enrolled. These kickback payments range from $300 to $1,500 per month per child. The amount of these payments was contingent on the services DHS authorized a child to receive. The higher the authorization amount, the higher the kickback. Often, parents threatened to leave and take their children to other autism centers if they didn't get paid higher kickbacks. Much like with the HSS program, autism claims to Medicaid in Minnesota have skyrocketed in recent years, from $3 million in 2018 to $54 million in 2019, $77 million in 2020, $183 million in 2021, $279 million in 2022, and $399 million in 2023. Meantime, the number of autism providers in the state has spiked from 41 to 328. Many of them in the Somali community establishing their own autism treatment centers, citing the need for culturally appropriate programming. By the time the fraud scheme was exposed, 1 in 16 Somali 4-year-olds in the state had reportedly been diagnosed with autism, a rate more than triple the state average. And then what were they doing? They were literally taking the payments, literally putting the cash in suitcases, and flying to Somalia to hand the cash to Al-Shabaab, the terrorist group. This is wild to me. The total costs ran to billions of taxpayer dollars. This again, reading from the City Journal. The Somali fraud rings have sent huge sums in remittances or money transfers from Minnesota to Somalia. An estimated 40% of households in Somalia get remittances from abroad. In 2023 alone, the Somali diaspora sent back $1.7 billion, more than the Somali government budget for the year. Our investigation reveals that some of this money has been directly linked to the Al-Qaeda Islamic terror group Al-Shabaab. According to multiple law enforcement sources, Minnesota's Somali community has sent untold millions through a network of hawalas, informal clan-based money traders who wound up in the coffers of Al-Shabaab. According to Glenn Kearns, a retired Seattle police detective who spent 14 years on the Federal Joint Terrorism Task Force, the Somalis ran a sophisticated money network spanning from Seattle to Minneapolis and were routing significant amounts of cash on commercial flights from the Seattle airport to the Hawala networks in Somalia. One of the networks, Kearns discovered, spent $20 million abroad in a single year. A staggering amount of money, Kearns said. I worked on it for 5 years. We had sources going into the Hawalas to send money. I went down to Minnesota and pulled all their records and, well, blankety blank, all these Somalis sending out money are on DHS benefits. How does that make sense? We all had good sources telling us it's welfare fraud. Kearns investigated the Hawalas in Somalia that were receiving the money transfers. He determined through human sources the significant funds were being sent to Al-Qaeda's Al-Shabaab network. Y'all, the good intentions of progressives. I want to be really nuanced here. There are people on social media on the right now who are trying to stir everyone up online right now about Muslim immigration to the United States. Unlike them, I grew up in the Middle East. I have many Muslim friends who would fit in your neighborhood. There are real concerns, however, about a growing trend led by the left to immigrate people to the United States who have no intention of integrating into American society. They don't want to give up their clannish ways from their homes, their tribal ties. They don't want to be American. They just want to live off of America. And many of them are indoctrinated with the idea that we owe it to them because of colonialism and past wars, and they're here to live off the system. They're not here to be Americans. I want a Muslim to come to the United States who wants to be American. I do not want a Muslim to come to the United States and decide that his ties to his culture and homeland are paramount to being an American. It means something to be an American, and you should assimilate into being an American. That doesn't mean giving up your religion. What it does mean is that the conquesting ways of Islam in Arabia cannot be the same thing here in the United States. What it means for the Somalis is that when you come to the United States, you integrate into an American community and you start eating tacos and hamburgers and everything else. You enjoy pizza and you become an American. You learn to speak the language and you integrate into society. And that's not happening, particularly in a place like Minnesota under Tim Walz, where the Somalis stay in Somali communities with Somali clan tribal loyalties. The Somalis hate each other based on those clan tribal loyalties. They have no desire or interest to actually be Americans. They want to be Somalis in America. I have a real problem with any group of people doing this. I would have a problem if it were a group of Frenchmen who came to the United States and wanted to set up a French colony in the United States. They didn't want to be English. They didn't want to speak English. They didn't want to have anything to do with English. I'd go in and buy my bread and cheese, and otherwise I'd want them all deported because they don't want to be Americans. They want to live off the system. Claiming, you Americans, you owe us for a revolution. No, we don't owe you a thing. Integrate, assimilate, be American. It doesn't matter whether they're white, black, brown, red, yellow, black, or white. I don't care. You assimilate into the United States. And these communities in Minnesota, they're taking advantage of progressivism and the progressive white guilt of the liberals in Minnesota, and they're funding terrorists who want to kill the Americans. Kudos to Chris Rufo and Ryan Thorpe for exposing this in City Journal. And again, if you text data to 33777, you can get the show notes and you can read this whole article for yourself. It's not behind a paywall. And it really is a must-read article that this is happening in Minnesota. And here's the other thing you need to know. Where is ABC News? CBS News? ABC, more Americans get their news from ABC News than any other source. Where are you, ABC? Why aren't you covering this? Barry Weiss at CBS, this is a great story for 60 Minutes to cover. See, the problem here is that because City Journal is run by the Manhattan Institute, which is right of center, a lot of the left will ignore this to their peril and ours. If you want to be dismissive of funding terror, don't be dismissive of the massive amounts of fraud. You have an entire network of Somali immigrants to Minnesota living in a Somali ghetto, essentially, in Minnesota, refusing to integrate, but they've decided if we diagnose our children as autistic, we'll get money. And some of those people are like, hey, and we can fund terrorists in Africa who are killing American soldiers. This is how a great nation commits suicide. I have real concerns about some of the people I see online trying to stir up animosity towards Muslims in America. I actually do, because I think they're overplaying their hand. There are concerns, and they're painting with such a broad brush, it's going to make it very easy for people to dismiss the real concerns, and there are real concerns. But I abhor the people who can see a story like this and say, well, that's Chris Rufo. I'm going to ignore the story. You shouldn't ignore the story. You ignore the story at your own peril. The largest funder of al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer, according to one source to City Journal. Millions of dollars are flowing from American taxpayers who live in Minnesota to Somalia to fund terrorism around the world, not just in Africa. And the American press corps will yawn and move on. You know, one of the greatest issues with bias in the media is what they refuse to cover. I've said that a number of times. When I was at CNN for a number of years before I moved over to Fox, I was oftentimes required to comment on stories that originated on left-wing websites. I cannot remember a single time I was required to comment on a story that originated on a right-wing site. And I had that conversation with an editor at CNN one time. They said, well, the right doesn't do news like the left. That's why. And I said, baloney. Well, I didn't say baloney. I said something close to baloney. Started with the B. And went through a series of stories that were being conducted by Andrew Breitbart at the time and by others, all investigative pieces by the right. And the senator at CNN had no idea, and finally established if there's a big story, I think, send it to them. And they'll vet it. And still, even when I did, they oftentimes came up with excuses to dismiss it. Will CNN do a story on the Minnesota taxpayers who are funding terrorism without even knowing it? MSNBC surely won't. Will CNN? Will PBS? Will the New York Times? This is a well-documented, well-researched, and well-sourced story, and it should get wider exposure and not just live on the conservative sphere of things because conservatives came up with it. And part of the problem for the press is that's what they like to do, and maybe Barry Weiss at CNN can change that, or CBS can change that. Hello, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. 877-973-7425 is the phone number. I'm going to be sending out my recipe list here in a little while. When stations are looking at this program and say, why do you talk about this? Why do you give out recipes? Because I'm a big believer that when you get to break bread with people, you get to know them a little better. And not a lot of people cook anymore in this country. And if I can help start the cooking revolution again, where you're actually finding something, a simple thing to cook for friends, I think it would be a good thing. Families still cook for Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, big holidays, but not enough, not regularly. And you know what? We're guilty in our house, too, because we live busy lives. My wife made a pot roast on Tuesday night, and it was the first time I think that we had a home-cooked meal outside of Sundays in our house in a while. We're always going places. You got music practice. You got tennis practice. You got to go to the gym. You haven't gone to the grocery store. The milk's expired in the fridge. It's just it really does become a habit to avoid cooking. And if I can get people in some ways to, even just on the weekends when you have some time, break bread. Find a recipe that's easy to make and break bread. I really feel strongly about that. And here at the holidays, you got Thanksgiving, and then you got Christmas, you got Hanukkah for some of you, and just being able to provide you some recipes that you can make for yourself, for friends and families, pies, how do I smoke my turkey, my gumbo recipe, all that stuff. Want to make it easy for you. If you text the word data to 33777, you don't have to do the paid option. You can do the free option. I'm going to send the recipe list out to everybody here in just a little while. Would love to give it to you. Some of you got it last year. It's the same thing from last year. Haven't updated it, but would love to have you guys get it. Now, I need to tell you about Swiss America because they've been warning people about a secret war on cash, and this keeps happening to me. In fact, it happened to me yesterday in Atlanta, where they don't want you using cash at certain places, and it drives me nuts. And I typically don't have cash, and so I typically do use credit and plastic, but to see no cash accepted at places blows my mind. And what's really happening here is that the government's trying to steer you to use plastic because then they can track your purchases. The secret war on cash is spreading. It includes cryptocurrency. Swiss America wants to give you their special report, The Secret War on Cash. You can get it completely free by calling or texting my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646. 800-289-2646. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK, or call or text Swiss America 800-289-2646. Send them my name, Eric. Message and data rates may apply.